In the quiet corners of a small town, where life moved at a gentle pace, there lived a boy named Ian. His world was filled with curiosity. Every afternoon, while other children played outside, he preferred wandering into his grandfather's attic. That attic was not just a storage space, it was a treasure chest of forgotten memories. Old trunks lined the floor, shelves sagged under the weight of books, and the smell of dust mixed with history filled the air. For Ian, it was a place where every object seemed to whisper a story. One sunny afternoon, as beams of light cut through the attic's tiny window, Ian's eyes caught a dull glimmer beneath a torn piece of cloth. He bent down, pulled the cloth aside, and found something he had never seen before: a clock. But this was no ordinary clock. Its glass was cracked, its hands frozen stiff, and a thick layer of dust covered its once golden frame. It looked lifeless, abandoned, and forgotten. Most children might have tossed it aside as useless junk. But Ian was not like most children. He felt an odd pull toward it, as though the clock was waiting for him. He picked it up carefully, brushed away the dust, and turned it in his hands. Silence. No tick. No movement. Just stillness. "What happened to you?" he whispered, as if the clock could hear him. Just then, his grandfather climbed the attic stairs. Seeing the clock in Ian's hands, he paused, his face softening with memory. "Ah, that old thing," he said gently. "It stopped working long ago. I never threw it away because it reminded me of something important. Just because something is broken doesn't mean it has no value." His voice carried a weight that made Ian think deeply. The boy looked at the clock again, this time with fresh eyes. Maybe it wasn't just a broken object. Maybe it was a challenge. Maybe it was an opportunity. Right then and there, a decision sparked in his heart: he would fix it. He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but he felt certain he could bring its heartbeat back. That evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the room, Ian placed the clock on his desk. Its silent face stared back at him, daring him to try. And with determination burning quietly in his young heart, Ian whispered, "I'll make you live again." That night, long after the house had grown quiet, Ian sat at his small wooden desk. In front of him lay the broken clock, its cracked glass catching the faint glow of his lamp. To him, it wasn't just an old piece of metal anymore, it was a challenge waiting to be conquered. With excitement buzzing in his heart, he rolled up his sleeves and began his very first attempt. At first, he tried the simplest things. He turned the knobs on the back, hoping the hands would magically move. Nothing. He shook the clock gently, listening for any sound inside, but all he heard was silence. He tapped it against the table, just like he had seen people do with radios or remotes. Still nothing. The stubborn stillness of the clock almost felt like it was mocking him. Frustration started creeping in. His young fingers fumbled with the tiny screws, and the tools felt clumsy in his hands. After only a few minutes, sweat dotted his forehead. "Why won't you work?" he muttered under his breath, staring at the lifeless clock. For a moment, he thought about putting it back in the attic, leaving it to gather dust again. But just as that thought crossed his mind, his grandfather's words replayed in his memory: "Not everything broken is without value." Those words stopped him. He looked at the clock again, really looked at it. Maybe fixing it wouldn't be easy. Maybe it would take time. But wasn't that the point? If something mattered, it deserved patience. Ian leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath. He realized he had rushed in, expecting instant results. The clock wasn't just broken, it was teaching him something. Fixing it would take more than shaking or guessing. It would take understanding, care, and persistence. Slowly, he packed away the tools for the night, placing the clock carefully back on his desk. It was still silent, still unmoving, but it no longer looked hopeless. Instead, it seemed like a puzzle waiting for the right hands to figure it out. As Ian climbed into bed, he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, I'll try again. I won't give up." And though the clock remained silent, deep inside, a new determination began ticking within him, a determination stronger than any frustration. That was the beginning. His first attempt had failed, but it had planted something far more powerful, the seed of patience. The next morning, Ian woke with a fresh resolve. The broken clock sat silently on his desk, its still hands frozen in time. Instead of rushing again, he decided to take a different approach. "If I want to fix you," he whispered, "I need to understand you." That thought marked the true beginning of his journey. He started by asking questions. At breakfast, he asked his grandfather, "How do clocks work?" His grandfather smiled and explained the basics: gears, springs, pendulums, balance. The words painted a picture in Ian's mind, but they also revealed how little he knew. Instead of feeling discouraged, he grew more determined. Knowledge, he realized, was the first tool he needed. Over the next few days, Ian searched for answers wherever he could. He borrowed books from the library about old machines. He watched videos showing how clockmakers carefully pieced tiny parts together. Sometimes, he even sketched gears on paper, trying to imagine how they fit. It was slow work, often confusing, but Ian stayed with it. Every small discovery, every new fact, felt like another step forward. Still, there were moments when impatience tested him. He would sit at his desk, staring at the clock, wishing it would just start ticking. His hands itched to twist the knobs and shake it again, but he held himself back. Patience, he reminded himself. Rushing won't help. Each time he resisted the urge to hurry, he felt himself growing stronger inside. One evening, after hours of studying, Ian carefully opened the back of the clock for the very first time. Tiny gears glimmered in the light, dust settled in corners, and delicate springs lay tangled. He didn't touch anything yet, he simply observed. For the first time, he saw the beauty hidden inside the silence. The clock wasn't just broken, it was waiting for gentle hands and careful understanding. That night, as he closed the clock again, Ian felt a quiet pride. He hadn't fixed it yet, but he had taken an important step. He had learned to slow down, to respect the process, to wait. The broken clock had already begun to teach him. It wasn't ticking on the outside, but inside Ian's heart, something new was alive. Patience. Real, steady patience. And with that patience, he knew one day the silence would break into sound. Days turned into weeks, and Ian's room slowly transformed into a little workshop. His desk was covered with tiny screwdrivers, cleaning cloths, and pages of notes. Each evening, he sat with the broken clock, no longer rushing, no longer expecting magic. Instead, he focused on small, careful steps. One quiet evening, he decided to clean the gears. With trembling hands, he removed the back cover again and gently brushed away the dust that had settled over the years. It was slow work, and more than once the brush slipped, making him nervous. But this time, instead of frustration, he reminded himself, slow is better than broken. He kept going, carefully, patiently. When the gears were finally clear of dust, Ian noticed something. One of the smaller wheels shifted ever so slightly when he nudged it. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't much, just a tiny movement, but it was the first sign of life. "You're waking up," he whispered with a smile. That small shift filled him with a joy bigger than words. Over the next few days, he kept working, polishing the metal, oiling the joints, and adjusting the springs little by little. Each night when he went to bed, he didn't see the silence of the clock as failure anymore, he saw it as progress in motion. He was no longer fighting the clock, he was working with it, learning its secrets. Then one evening, as he adjusted one of the hands, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. When he moved the gear carefully, the hand twitched forward just a fraction. It was tiny, almost invisible, but to Ian it was a miracle. His eyes widened, and a smile spread across his face. "You moved," he exclaimed. That little twitch was enough to light hope like a fire inside him. He ran downstairs to tell his grandfather, holding the clock close to his chest. "It moved," he said breathlessly. His grandfather looked at him with pride and said, "That's how it begins, my boy. Small progress, but a sign of big hope." That night, Ian lay awake, replaying that moment over and over in his mind. The clock was still far from fixed, but he no longer doubted. Every tiny step, every small improvement, was proof that patience was paying off. For the first time, he felt certain the clock would live again. It was a quiet evening, the kind when the whole house seemed to rest. Ian sat at his desk, his tools spread neatly before him, the broken clock resting under the glow of his lamp. He had been working for weeks, cleaning, adjusting, learning, and trying again. Each day had brought small progress, and now he felt ready for one more attempt. His hands no longer trembled with impatience, they moved carefully, gently, like a craftsman's. He leaned in close, adjusting a stubborn spring inside the clock. His fingers turned the tiny screwdriver slowly, making sure each piece fit where it belonged. For a moment, everything was still. Then, as if the clock had taken a deep breath, a sound broke the silence. Tick, tock, tick. Ian froze. His eyes widened. Had he imagined it? He held his breath, leaning even closer. There it was again. Tick, tock, tick. The clock was alive. His heart raced as joy surged through him. He had waited so long for this sound, dreamed of it, imagined it, but now it was real. He almost couldn't believe it. The attic's forgotten treasure was no longer silent, it was speaking again, its voice soft but steady. Ian jumped up and shouted, "Grandfather! Come quickly!" His voice echoed through the house. His grandfather climbed the stairs, his face curious. When he entered the room, Ian held out the clock with shining eyes. "Listen!" The old man bent closer, and the gentle rhythm filled the air. He smiled, his eyes glistening with pride. "Well done, my boy," he said softly. "Do you hear that? That is not just the sound of a clock. That is the sound of your patience, your effort, and your heart." Ian felt a lump in his throat. He hugged his grandfather tightly, still clutching the ticking clock in his hands. In that moment, he realized the truth: fixing the clock was more than a victory over gears and springs. It was a victory over himself, his impatience, his frustration, his doubt. That night, long after his grandfather had gone to bed, Ian sat in his room listening to the steady rhythm. Tick, tock, tick. It felt like music, a song of triumph and hope. He whispered to the clock, "Thank you for teaching me. You're more than just time, you're a lesson." For the first time in years, the clock lived again. And so did Ian's faith and patience. The day the clock ticked again became a memory Ian would never forget. From that moment on, the once broken clock found a permanent place on his study table. Its gentle rhythm filled his room every day, reminding him of the journey that had changed him. To anyone else, it was just an old clock, its frame scratched and its glass cracked. But to Ian, it was far more. It was a teacher. It was proof that patience and effort could bring something lifeless back to motion. Weeks passed, and life carried on. Schoolwork piled up, challenges grew harder, and at times Ian felt overwhelmed. But whenever he grew restless, whenever he felt like giving up, his eyes wandered to the clock. Its steady tick-tock was like a whisper: "Slow down. Keep trying. Don't quit." One evening, as he struggled with a difficult math problem, frustration almost pushed him to close his book. But then the sound of the clock caught his ear. He remembered the long days it had taken to understand its gears, the countless times he had failed before making the smallest progress. Suddenly, the problem on his paper didn't feel impossible, it simply felt like another gear waiting to be understood. With a calmer mind, he kept working until the solution appeared. The lesson stretched beyond school. When friends argued or when plans didn't go his way, Ian didn't rush into anger anymore. He remembered the patience that had saved the clock, and he tried to use the same patience with people. Little by little, he realized that the broken clock had not only been fixed on the outside, it had fixed something inside him too. Years later, as he grew older, the clock still stood on his desk. Its tick-tock was quieter now, its glass still cracked, but it remained precious. Whenever someone asked why he kept such an old thing, Ian would smile and say, "This clock taught me patience. It taught me that what looks broken may still hold value if you give it time and effort." The clock had once been silent, abandoned, and forgotten. Now it was alive, not just in sound but in meaning. Ian carried its lesson everywhere: patience and persistence bring rewards greater than quick results. And so, every tick of that old clock reminded him and anyone who listened that time honors those who do not give up.